So, what you have just heard were excerpts from chapters 6 and 7 of the Lotus Sutra, specifically the translation by Gene Reeves in the Wisdom Publications version. And to give now Hurvitz's summary of those two chapters, he says, the summary of chapter 6 is, the Buddha prophesies future Buddhahood to 4 other Shravakas. So what we have to recall is that what the Lotus Sutra is touting is the bodhisattva path and the one Buddha vehicle. That up until the writing of this profound sutra, the focus of Buddhism was on the attainment of nirvana by so-called Shravakas with the goal of attaining arhathood. The notion there, as you'll recall, is that through meditation and ethical conduct and other forms of discipline, the disciple of the Buddha would be able to free himself or herself from attachment and desire so as to be able to attain nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering, freedom from the repetitive cycle of births and deaths. Again, in this sutra, the Buddha is preaching a different goal and a different path to that goal. The path being bodhisattvahood and the goal being Buddhahood itself. So, what he's saying in chapter 6, what Shakyamuni, as represented within this sutra, is saying to 4 of the key Shravakas is, you are actually going to become Buddhas. And he gives some specifics about the nature of the land that they will occupy or inhabit when they become Buddhas, and the nature of the activities that they will be performing in the context of their status as Buddhas. Keeping in mind then that this is kind of freaking them out, because up till now they had never heard such a prophecy. They had only heard that nirvana was the ultimate attainment of a Sravaka. They had been geared toward the goal of becoming an arhat, free of desire and fully liberated. So naturally they feel much joy at this prophecy, and at the end of the chapter he basically prophesies that all of the Shravakas will become Buddhas. I think the number was 500 of them, which are presumably those that are in the assembly. So, given that he has now made that prophecy, he wants to explain a little more about what the dynamics are as to why and how this is occurring, since it's in conflict or in contradiction to some of the fundamentals of the previous teachings that they had been exposed to. So in chapter 7, as Hurvitz says, and again, keeping in mind that this is from the scripture of the Lotus Blossom of the Fine Dharma, translated from the Chinese by Leon Hurvitz, and this particular version was published by Columbia University Press. So in chapter 7, according to Hurvitz, the Buddha tells the story of his career as a Buddha in a previous era and concludes with the following parable, also illustrating the main point of this scripture. And here's Hurvitz's description and summary of the parable. A guide was leading a group of travelers to a spot where a treasure lay buried. On the way, the travelers wearied, and some spoke of turning back. The guide, accordingly, conjured up an apparent city on the way, and successfully urged his companions to rest and refresh themselves there. When they had done so, they went on and reached the spot where the treasure was concealed. Then the guide told them that the city they had seen a while back had been an illusory city and not a real one, which he had conjured up for the purpose of conquering their discouragement. Hurvitz goes on to say, "Just so, says the Buddha, are the beings. They tire quickly of the quest for salvation, and the Buddha conjures up imaginary forms of salvation for them midway, e.g., the vehicles of the Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha." So the point of the parable is that the teaching of the attainment of nirvana by virtue of an appreciation of the Four Noble Truths and the treading of the Eightfold Path represents only a partial attainment. That the true attainment is to be discovered through the practices of the bodhisattva, which lead ultimately to the final attainment of complete enlightenment as a Buddha.